Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're doing a painting based on Elden Ring. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. So I've been watching a lot of Elden Ring clips because I have not had time to play it, and friends of mine have been asking for an Elden Ring painting, so I thought now would be a good time to do that. And the Renala fight in particular has stood out to me as something that I really like aesthetically and thought it would be fun to paint. So I've drawn in a horizon almost about halfway up the canvas and the moon on the right third. Trying to figure out exactly how big I wanted that to be because I could make it really big and take up a lot of canvas. I could make it a lot smaller and show a lot more space and the reflection in the water. But I decided to kind of put it somewhere in the middle of the road to give me a good amount of space up top and then reflection down here. So I'm going to lightly draw in where my horizon line is and where the moon is going to go, and then try and figure out exactly how I want the galaxy to go in the background so I can paint that first and the stars first, and let it dry before I do the moon or the water or like the glow I want to have along the horizon. Now this canvas was gessoed in white because that's how it comes from the store, and I've gessoed it in black on top. But my gesso for my black gesso has gotten a bit chunky where it's dried out a little bit, and a lot of stuff was sticking to the canvas. So once it dried, I sanded it down and it did knock off a bunch of that stuff, so it looks really good now. It just looks a bit patchy, especially in an area where I really had to get some of that stuff off. But it's fine. Like, this totally works, especially for what I'm doing. In fact, it might work better because I'll be able to see where I've painted stuff for the galaxy and where I haven't. In any of these tiny little white dots, if perchance they do happen to end up in the final piece, they'll just look like stars, so I'm not worried about that at all. So like I said, I'm going to draw in my horizon and the moon, and then figure out exactly where I want the galaxy to be. So I have a glove on the hand I'm going to be holding my sponge because it's going to get messy. This is a natural sea sponge. It is wet, but not like dripping wet. It's just a little damp. And then I have all my colors on my palette. So I've covered up everything I used to make these colors so they don't dry out and I don't waste the paint. But I have a light cyan, cyan with a little bit of ultramarine blue, and then I've neutralized it with orange. And then I have the same thing but with some white. And then I have these different teals over here, with this one being a bit more grayer and this one being a bit lighter. I also have carbon black to make things darker as I get towards the edges of where I want the galaxy to be, into the deeper space. So I have this space drawn here, and this is going to get all those lighter colors, and it's going to get darker the further away from that it gets. But towards the horizon, I'm also going to make it lighter into the gray teal that I've mixed up, just to have a little bit of a glow along that space. I went back and forth with my greens and my blues until I was happy with this. I worked into my lighter greens and my lighter blues, and then it was too bright, so I had to take some of my darker colors and bring those back in to darken up some of that space. But now it's time to add the stars, and I want to concentrate them in the center of all of this because that's where the majority of the stars should be. There's going to be stars everywhere across the sky, but I want the most of them here. So I have a toothbrush with a little bit of white paint on the tip of the bristles. I have a glove on because this gets way too messy. And I have a little bit more of Golden's High Flow and Titanium White in this dish here. So I can just dip the tip of the bristles in, and then I will pull back on those bristles and release onto the canvas. And I'm trying to concentrate those here, like I said, so I may go over that part a few times, and I am going to get some in other spaces, which is fine, but sometimes I notice I need to like twist it a little bit, so I'm aiming them more up this way or more down, depending on where they're falling, so I can get the majority of them in this space. Originally, I wanted the moon only to be about like 4 inches in radius, so about like this tall, but it didn't look right once I had drawn that in. So I drew it a bit bigger and I thought it looked a lot better. So I drew in the details of the moon. It's the same moon that we have here on Earth. So I have the big dark space here with the big bright spot, and then I drew the reflection down onto the water. And I'm going to be painting both sides with the reflection, even though some of that is going to get covered by like the ripples and it's going to distort it, and there will be definitely like a shadow here on the horizon so you can see where that line is for the water. I want to do that because some of it will be a perfect mirror reflection on the water, so I need to have it done first so that later when I work on the water I can distort it as I'm doing the water ripples. So I'm going to fill in the darker areas first and then work my way into some of the lighter areas, and finally on the very edge where it's super bright, where it's the brightest white paint that I have, I'll work on that very last for the moon part here. So my moon is looking really good. It had looked like this, which is the reflection part of the moon, and I thought it needed more, so I started to add in craters, and I think it added a ton to it, and it looks really good. Towards the center, they're rounder, and then towards the edge, they're more elliptical. And as you would get to the edges of the moon, you would start to see them in an elliptical shape instead of the face-on round part of the center here. So it looks really good, and it's added a lot to that part of the moon. Now the bottom part here, if the water was a perfect still body of water, we would have a perfect mirrored reflection and you would see all of those craters. But we don't. We have all these ripples and stuff going on the surface of the water, so it's going to get very distorted. So I wanted it here to kind of know where it was, to know where some of the dark and light areas were, so as I do the ripples I can work from that. But there's no point in doing the craters down here because it's going to get distorted as I paint. So I started with some of my main gray colors, which is this true like neutral gray back here, and then I worked into a darker blue and then a navy blue, and then I worked lighter with a lighter blue and then just kind of into some light grays, and then titanium white towards the edges and a few highlights on the center part of the moon. So after that was done, I put the tape down, and now I'm going to fill in my base layer for my water, starting with a navy blue up here and then working more into a like bright cyan, which will get dimmed down as I work on those ripples. But I need that base there so that I can start to put the ripples on the surface of the water and distort the moon at that point. I kept going back and forth with my same moon colors, trying to bring in different ripples where the light would catch on the tops of these waves, and then I just brought them out into the blue parts, and then that part was done. Now there is a little bit of chalk left in here and then where I put my signature, so I'm just going to get a wet towel and wipe it all down to make sure all of that chalk is gone. And we're done! We have the background of the Renala fight from Elden Ring. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a poster or a phone case, or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.